Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with Paris-based jazz pianist and composer Benoît Delbecq. We caught up with him at his home in Paris to talk about his latest 2021 CD, The Weight of Light. Another gem in this line of free jazz improvisational compositions he's put out. Since the early 90s, his works have received acclaim from legendary musicians like Mal Waldron, Steve Lacy, and the great Steve Coleman. After taking a few years of classical piano lessons at the age of 6, at 16 he studied improvised music with free music pioneer Alan Silva, who was the founder of the Institute for Artistic and Cultural Perception in Paris. By the age of 19, he was already studying sound engineering and acoustics. His fascination and joy of music is one you should hear. Enjoy. Benoît, thank you for taking a minute out for Neon Jazz.
Hi, Kansas City. Hi, Joe.
It's great to meet you, and I want to start off with your latest 2021 CD, The Weight of Light, and it comes out during a global pandemic. Talk to me a little bit about releasing music during this time.
Oh, it's a special thing, of course. Well, the irony of this is that the record was actually, I recorded it about 2 weeks before the first big lockdown, So it's funny because some people think I've actually recorded it during the lockdown and when the pandemic was actually hitting France so badly. And actually, no, it was before. So, but the whole, the mixing and all that took place, of course, during the very hard period. I mean, it's still very hard here, but it's improving slowly with vaccination. But it's very strange because usually we play gigs in parallel to the release of the record, and of course, since everything is shut down gig-wise, and since now 13 months, there was no way to do that for the release. So we finally opted with Chris Davis, who runs the label, to go for it anyway, and hopefully I'll get to play some gigs with this music later on. It's a very special time for all people working in this scene where there's audience and publics and we're trying to make things look good for the future. I mean, I guess we're not doing all the same thing, but practicing, writing new music, rehearsing, so we can do rehearsals, we can do recordings, we can do producing. So I'm still quite busy, but it's just a different life totally because I'm used to travel all the time, and meet people, and of course that social thing is missing terribly, like not going to a gig or not going to theater or it's just you can't have like real dinner with friends somewhere, and no restaurants, no cafes. Which is makes Paris very sad, really. But I guess the same applies with every city around the world.
It's such a unique sound, this album. How did you develop this sound on this album? There's so much going on.
I've been using the idea of preparing the piano for many years. I mean, it's since almost like a teenage almost, but in especially my solo work, I've developed a certain approach of rhythms that actually which are like box in boxes, Jack in the Box. Like there's a rhythm, but something is like underground, under it and above it. So some peers or people sometimes think, how long did it take to do like this track? How many re-recordings did you do? How many layers? And I always have to say that it's actually totally it's played on the spot. It's totally live. I mean, there's absolutely no overdubbing or anything, and it's just the way I played it, which is actually which is what you see on the film of the recording, which is online. This film called The Weight of Light that one can find on the it's actually on Vimeo, but any search engine will find it. So it's a special sound that I've been using for many years. Of course, each tune I write with using this particular sound, and of course the piano approach is very specific in terms of sound. But basically, I'm using wood twigs, that I curve myself, and as well as bits of eraser or blue tack, and that's all. And also I stick some elements that may rattle, so it gives sort of very sort of ancient sound, which doesn't seem to be coming from a piano. Like you could compare it sometimes, sonically speaking, with balafon or some gamelan music. So, but I'm really from the jazz family. With my history is just history of being on the scene for many years and playing with great players around. And so the solo work is a special sound for me, because I don't have to make anybody sound good, which is what I like to do in a band, but it's just like I focus on different parameters then, and the sonic aspect of the piano, the rendering of the piano sound is pretty special as far as I'm concerned.
You started on the piano at 6. You've been at this for quite a while. What was it about the free improvisational realm of jazz that really lured you in?
Well, it was basically when I was 15, 16 years old, I was definitely interested in jazz, and I was taking harmony lessons with a very nice French pianist in town and in Paris. Basically, there were no jazz departments in music schools and whatsoever in the country. I mean, there was like basically 3 places I could study, and one was in south of France, and in Paris there were 2 schools. One was very formatted like Berkeley School a very sort of historical teaching of jazz, and the other school was actually founded by Alan Silva, the bass player, who was a former collaborator with Cecil Taylor and Sun Ra and Frank Wright, and so Alan was in town since the 70s, and he started this school called AACP, as Institute for Artistic and Cultural Perception, and I actually rung the bell in this school rather than going to the more formal school, because I was interested in free forms, and I was really into the Art Ensemble of Chicago, and I was into Cecil Taylor, Ornette Coleman, and which as a piano player was a bit sort of different, I would say, than my fellow piano players of my age, who were more into the very sort of mainstream thing, and so I ended up at the age of 16 studying improvisation with Alan Silva and doing workshops there, and I actually was very lucky, because I met people like Bobby Few, or Steve Lacy was coming, or Sam Rivers, and because there was a little club in the school, and so all these great players came to play, and Mal Waldron came, and Mal Waldron became my he sort of took me under his wings, and was checking the news from me whenever he was coming to town. He would call, he would say, "I'm in town, let's meet at this cafe there and talk, and maybe you play me something on a cassette," and so that's how I found myself in an environment of very creative people, and that was just it was just sort of a good fortune. Although I had the tip from my brother-in-law, who's a composer and who knew jazz and all forms of jazz very well. He said, "Oh, you should better go to the Alan Silva school than the more formal one, because you might not learn everything there, but you might very well meet with people who share your wish for creative music." So that's how I ended up there, which was really a good fortune.
What has been some of the best advice that you got as you were kind of getting into this world, this professional world that you're in? What advice still resonates with you that has been the most beneficial?
It came from Mal Waldron, actually. I think I was about 16 or 17. So we had met before, and he had given me a few lessons, which were basically like we were playing 2 pianos, and he would start something, and I would follow him in the improvisation process, and then the next piece I would start something, and I was scared to death, but I would start something and he would follow me, and so that was not like really a teaching, theory, whatever. Mal was just a natural player, and it was incredible to share this with him. And so he was taking the news, and there was one time when he said, "Oh, did you record something? Bring me something you record anywhere. Just record it like a Walkman, whatever it is." And so I recorded a version of "Round About Midnight" by Thelonious Monk, but using a few prepared sounds on the family upright piano, and with sort of stretching the chord changes and playing it sort of abstract, but still respecting some of the composition, of course, the melody and all that. But it's rather free and all that. So Mal Waldron listened to it very carefully with his headphones, and once he had listened to it, he said, "Hey, this is very nice, Benoit, but you should do it with your own music, because if you want to play this Thelonious Monk tune, there are movements in the voices. There are several voices, and you have to actually figure this out before you start doing anything. But you should. I like what you did. So what you should do is make it with your own music." So I found myself in the street outside the club he was playing, I think, and I was thinking, what does he mean by do it with my own music? So I started to sort of head scratch and brainstorm, and what did it mean to make your own music? So of course I was thinking of people like Ornette or people like Cecil Taylor. What is it that makes their music sound like it's Cecil Taylor? And so this advice from Mal actually has been driving my whole life, because until the very last time I saw him, he was still taking the news and listening to my records, because then I was recording and all that. And I used to always tell him, "That's because you told me that line," And it was like a gimmick. It's like a gimmick that still is very present in my life.
So let's say you have a dream tonight and you run into your younger self around the time you were becoming a professional, and you could give your younger version of yourself one piece of advice. What would it be?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, there was this family sort of issue in the family, because my older sister was a great piano player. And she was 6 years older, and she was not improvising at all, but her chops with, playing all the classical music repertoire were amazing, and I felt I was not really as gifted as she was, and so I sort of dropped classical piano studies I was doing as a child, and that has been sort of a regret because I restarted a few years of classical piano studies to improve my chops, but that was much later. So I would have told myself, keep going with this, because it was such a struggle for me to get back to sort of read music and all that when I was already like 20 years old, which was, so it's been a little sort of odyssey like thing for me, but that's all. I mean, the rest, I would say, just, you're young, do your thing, it's only when you're younger that you can start it. I mean, it's hard to start this when you're 50 years old, so, I mean, there's different possibilities as an artist. You could be a writer and start at 50 years old, but playing an instrument is a long way to go. So, yeah, I would encourage my own self to stay in contact with a certain rigor at the instrument that was sort of away from me for another 5-6 years before I took over on the piano, before I started to really practice again.
What do you like the best about being a professional musician? Every day you wake up and you get to create. What do you like the best about it?
Well, there's lesser moments where you actually rave about it than other moments where there's so much to do in terms of logistics and booking the gigs and doing all this, and that's so time in the time dimension. That's probably 25% of the time you really are fully a musician and rehearse or write music and travel to play gigs. But yeah, it's of course this COVID situation changed it all, but it's a very privileged life, of course. It's a difficult life, but it takes a lot of focus and concentration and because there's many good players around, so you have to develop your own thing by yourself, and so it's a sort of a solitary and collective thing at the same time, because you of course happen to to play with other people and great people and share ideas and all that. But yeah, of course, the fact of like waking up in the morning and knowing that you have no chief, you have no orders to give, you have no orders given, and your kids are fine and all that. I mean, it's very privileged, of course, very, very privileged.
So when we do return to live music, what do you hope both the musician and the audience realizes about the power of live music and this gift of creating?
Oh, I think we were lucky in France because between August and early November, very early November, we were able to play gigs again. So we had this sort of 4 months with no playing, then another 3 months with some playing, and you could see the people's smiles on their face when you're playing. You know, it was like because they had been cut from all that for already like 3 months, and that's already a lot. So I think there'll be a big wave of immense pleasure. And as for myself, I'd be happy to sit and listen to my peers play gigs, you know, and just go to a gig, listen to some friends play or some great players. And the same applies for cinema, theater. I love theater. I love, you know, dance shows, and so yeah, I think it's going to be a big breath of air because we are all in like missing this oxygen in our lives. I mean, that of course depends where you live, but of course there's a lot happening in Paris. So, but my concern is my worry is about how the network is going to be after this disaster, because the scene I'm on is a fragile scene around the world. So it's like a niche thing, and it's usually run by people who are not necessarily professional or making their living with this, and the cards have changed in the network because it's there's so much thing to actually postpone and replace, and so it looks like I just hope this network that's very precious on our scene for our scene is going to be okay. You know, of course we're in touch with some people and getting the of course the temperature, but of course for people administrating festivals or venues, I mean it's super hard times for them too, you know.
Yeah.
So I hope the damage is not going to be too bad. I think there'll be a lot of pleasure in the live music being back. That's going to be awesome. I mean, I can't wait, really, you know. So we do gigs, you know, we play a few gigs, but online, you know, and a couple of weeks ago I went down to south of France with a French drummer player, Daniel Zimmerman, and I was part of his quartet, and so we played in an empty venue for just one camera, and there was not even a camera guy, you know. It was just nobody there. So it's you know, and even the sound engineer, he was in some booth somewhere, you know. He's not even present with us. So that's I mean, that's very weird. And as for myself, I'm not so much following so many gigs online, you know. I mean, I listen to the music, but I don't necessarily stand in my you know, sofa or something, or chair to actually just look at the gig for an hour and a half, you know. But I use it as for like a radio, you know. I'm not a good client for online concerts, but I listen to them. I mean, actually, I like if I'm listening to radio, which is cool because we're missing more and more in the French national radio. We're missing more and more live music. There's less and less live music, so it feels like the good vibe of live music on the radio is back. You know, for the economy of the music, I mean, I don't know, you know. I mean, here in Europe is very different to the US, of course, because the US works a lot with donations, and I'm sure there's some donation going on. But as for myself, I can't really donate to anyone because I'm just, you know, father of three and living in Paris and no gigs. I mean, some are sort of paid half or sort of thing like that, but you know, the money's really tough, so I can't really, you know, fund anything in America or anywhere else. So, but in France it's different because we have musicians who actors or dancers or technicians who are on the scene for a certain number of years and all that. We have a special system for unemployment, so we're still getting some sort of flat unemployment money, which is not enough, but of course it definitely helps. And I know some peers of mine in the States don't have that, or in England. It's terrible in England, for instance. So I know that quite some musicians and I mean that have to go to take 9-to-5 job these times today, because they can't get along without it, which is tough. I mean, it's a tough thing when you've been working on the scene and practicing for 20 years, that you have to do this. But come on, it's a world crisis, and so I think that the scene will be damaged, but there will be a sort of similar energy to the situation of sort of after war. But it was not a war with people throwing bombs at us, but the culture world in Europe has been hurt a lot. So but I mean, it's worldwide, of course. So hope and see. As for myself, I'm from the older generation, so I belong to a network since many years, and it might not be as difficult as for the younger players. And I'm trying to be careful and take care of the younger players I like or work with, because some of them really want to quit, because they think, if it's going to be like this for years, I can't take it. These kids trying, 25 years of age, so starting to make a living with music, who suddenly have to stop. That's really tough. That's making me very worried for them, and for the future of music, of course, because it's a generation. It's a generation that's been hit, and I just hope that the interest for creating music will reboot nicely, like it was before, or even better, but you never know, because the forces of commerce in music have been so influential in this COVID era, that people's relation to music may have changed a bit too. I don't know. It's difficult to say. Nobody knows.
Everyone has a perception of who they think you are, or an idea of who they think you are, your family, your friends, your fans, but you're the one that's living your life. What's your perception of who you are? Who do you think you are?
That's a funny question.
Okay.
Oh, well, I'm a musician, piano player, composer, producer, mixer. I do many things. Father of 3, who had the good fortune to meet incredible people in my young age, and then who encouraged me to go through this process of finding my own direction in music, and with, of course, not only me, but with friends and colleagues, and as a side, and of course, it's not all about me, finding my direction. It's all linked with anybody you've been involved in music with. So that's it. I'm just imaginary folklore musician who thinks he belongs to the jazz world, because I feel that's my family, and but that's my sort of no border sort of definition of myself. But as for the rest of it, I'm very French, and enjoying my good wine and my cheese and my books, and also I read books in English, of course. But arts, visual arts, theater, literature, cinema, of course. It's not that original, except that I'm doing my own little thing every day.
That's a great answer, man. Hey, thank you for getting back with me. Thank you for taking some time out for Neon Jazz. Good luck with the album and the live music, getting back to it.
Thanks very much.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in Paris, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Benoit for his time, music, and class. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino in the iTunes Store. Visit Neon Jazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. And until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.